burst through the throne room doors like a hunted animal, and every vampire in the hall turned to watch. Her name was Maya, and she was about to beg the most dangerous man in the kingdom for a lie that would save her life. The Vampire King didn't look up from the blood treaty he was signing. King Dorian sat on a throne carved from black obsidian, his dark hair falling across a face that could have been sculpted from marble and moonlight. He wore crimson and black, colors that shouldn't have worked together but on him looked like war and roses. Around him, his council stood in a semicircle of velvet and fangs, all ancient, all powerful, all staring at the human girl who dared to interrupt. Maya's hands shook as she crossed the marble floor. She'd practiced this moment 100 times in her mind during the 3-mile walk from town. She'd rehearsed the words, steadied her voice, prepared herself for rejection. But now, standing in the cold shadow of his throne with her heart hammering against her ribs, every careful word dissolved on her tongue. "Your Majesty," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The king's pen stilled. Slowly, so slowly it felt like winter creeping across glass, he raised his eyes to meet hers. They were the color of smoke and steel, and when they landed on her face, Maya forgot how to breathe. He said nothing, just watched her with the patience of something that had lived for centuries and could afford to wait. "I need," Maya started, then stopped. Her fingers twisted in the fabric of her dress, a simple cotton thing that marked her as human, as poor, as beneath the notice of anyone in this room. "I need your help." The council members exchanged glances. One of them, a woman with silver hair and a smile like cut glass, laughed softly. "A human needs help from the king. How novel." "Silence," Dorian said without looking away from Maya. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade through silk. The council fell silent. Maya took a breath that tasted like copper and fear. "There's a man," she said. "A vampire named Marcus Vrel. He's been following me for months, waiting outside my work, leaving letters at my door. Yesterday he told me that if I don't accept his courtship by the next full moon, he'll invoke the old laws, the claiming rights." Another murmur rippled through the council. Claiming rights were ancient, brutal, and technically still legal. If a vampire declared formal intent and the human had no protected status, no family to contest it, they could be taken, bonded, owned. "And you have no family," Dorian stated. It wasn't a question. "My parents died 3 years ago," Maya said, forcing herself to meet those steel-gray eyes. "I have no siblings, no husband, no one to speak for me." "So you came here," the king said, leaning back in his throne. "To ask what exactly?" Maya's fingernails dug into her palms. The words came out in a rush, desperate and raw. "Pretend to be my husband. Just for one night. Just long enough for me to stand before Marcus and show him I'm already claimed. Already protected. He can't touch me if I belong to someone more powerful." The throne room went so silent Maya could hear her own heartbeat. Then the laughter started, not from Dorian, but from his council, rippling through the assembled vampires like wind through dead leaves. "A human asking the king to play pretend," someone said. "The girl has lost her mind. She's desperate," another voice offered, almost pitying. "She doesn't understand what she's asking." But Dorian didn't laugh. He stood, unfolding from his throne with a grace that didn't seem quite real, and descended the 3 steps to the main floor. He moved like shadow made solid, like something that had forgotten it was supposed to follow the same laws of physics as everything else. He stopped 3 paces from Maya, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that she could smell night air and old blood and something darker she couldn't name. "You want me to pretend to be your husband," he said softly. "To lie to Marcus Vrel and send him away." "Yes," Maya whispered. "Just once. Just long enough. Dorian's expression didn't change. No. The word landed like a stone in still water. Maya felt something inside her chest crack. "Please," she said, and hated how her voice broke. "I have nowhere else to go. No one else to ask. If Marcus takes me, I'll disappear. I'll become property. I'll stop existing. I know." The king's eyes held hers, and for a moment, Maya saw something move in those gray depths. Something that looked almost like old pain, which is why I won't pretend. Maya blinked. "What?" "If I claim you," Dorian said, his voice dropping even lower, "it will be real. No pretending. No lies. You'll be mine in every way the law recognizes. My wife. My consort. My responsibility." The throne room exploded. "Your Majesty, you can't. A human consort. This is madness. The bloodlines." The council erupted in protest, voices overlapping in a cacophony of shock and outrage, but Dorian raised one hand and silence fell like a hammer. Maya stared at him, her mind struggling to process what she'd just heard. "I don't understand," she said. "You want me to actually marry you? To stay married?" "I'm offering you protection," Dorian replied. "Real protection. Not a performance. Not a lie to be discovered later and used against you. If you want to be safe from Marcus Vrel, if you want to be safe from every vampire who might look at you and see easy prey, then you become untouchable. You become mine." "But," Maya started. "Why would you?" "Because no one should be hunted." His voice was hard, final, with something underneath it that sounded like old anger directed at someone not in the room. "Because the claiming rights are barbaric and I've been looking for an excuse to challenge them. And because if I'm going to take a consort, I'd rather it be someone brave enough to walk into this room and ask for help than some political arrangement my council keeps pushing on me." He extended his hand, palm up. A gesture of offering, not demand. "Choose," he said. "Leave here unprotected, and hope Marcus loses interest, or accept my claim and never fear him again. But understand this. If you take my hand, it's not pretend. It's real. It's forever." Maya looked at his hand, at the long fingers and old scars, at the silver ring on his thumb that marked him as king. She thought about Marcus Vrel waiting in the shadows, about the letters that had started romantic and turned threatening, about the way he'd smiled at her yesterday, all teeth and certainty, as if she were already his. She thought about her parents, dead from the fever, and the small apartment she lived in alone, about the bakery where she worked, kneading dough at 4 a.m. because it was the only job she could get, about the life she had, small and quiet and hers. And she thought about the look in this vampire king's eyes, the way he'd said no one should be hunted, the way his voice had turned to steel when his counsel laughed. She reached out and placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, cool and certain. The moment their skin touched, something shifted in the air. Magic, old and binding, recognizing a claim made and accepted. Around them, the council fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of witnesses, of a moment that couldn't be taken back. Dorian's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it didn't match the power radiating from him. "Welcome home," he said quietly. And Maya realized she'd just changed her life forever, for a man she didn't know. In a world she didn't understand, because the alternative was worse. She'd asked for pretend, he'd given her real. Now she'd have to figure out how to survive it. The king's private chambers smelled like leather and old books and something Maya couldn't quite name. Cedar, maybe. Or smoke from wood that had burned centuries ago and left its ghost in the walls. She stood in the center of the receiving room, still wearing her cotton dress, still shaking from adrenaline, while Dorian spoke in low tones to a tall vampire woman who'd appeared the moment they'd left the throne room. "This is Celeste," he said, turning to Maya. "My head of household. She'll help you settle in." Celeste had steel gray hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that looked like winter twilight. She studied Maya the way someone might study an unexpected puzzle piece, trying to figure out where it fit. "You'll need clothes," Celeste said, her voice crisp and efficient. A proper wardrobe. The king's consort can't be seen in cotton. I like cotton, Maya said before she could stop herself. Celeste's expression didn't change, but something that might have been approval flickered across her face. You can like it in private. In public, you'll wear silk. She turned to Dorian. The announcement. When? Tomorrow night, Dorian said. A formal presentation. I want every vampire in the territory to know she's under my protection before Marcus hears rumors and tries something stupid. Celeste nodded and left without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and suddenly, Maya was alone with the vampire king she'd just married. The silence stretched. Dorian moved to a cabinet against the wall and poured 2 glasses of something amber. He held one out to her. You don't drink blood, Maya said. It wasn't a question, but it came out uncertain anyway. Not exclusively, Dorian replied. This is whiskey. Old enough to be your great-grandmother. It'll steady your nerves. Maya took the glass. The crystal was heavy in her hand, cold and real. She took a sip and the liquid burned all the way down, but it did help. She took another. Dorian watched her from where he stood by the window, backlit by moonlight that turned him into a silhouette. You're afraid of me, he observed. Yes, Maya said. She'd learned young that honesty was simpler than lies. Good, Dorian said. Fear will keep you careful. But you should know I won't hurt you. The claiming is real. But I'm not Marcus Vrel. I won't force anything you don't freely give. Then what do you want from me? Maya asked. The question had been building in her chest since the throne room. Why did you really agree to this? Dorian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of something carefully considered. My first wife died 200 years ago. The words landed like stones in still water. Maya set down her glass. I'm sorry, she said. Because what else could she say? Her name was Isla, Dorian continued. Human, like you. We had 17 years together before age took her. I watched her grow old while I stayed frozen. Watched her hair turn gray. Watched her hands begin to shake. And when she died, I swore I'd never bind myself to a human again. Never watch someone I cared for wither while I remained unchanged. He turned to face her fully. The moonlight caught his features, making him look carved from ice and old grief. For 2 centuries I've kept that promise. My council has paraded vampire nobility through this palace, trying to tempt me into political marriages. Beautiful immortals who would give me heirs and alliances. And I've refused them all, because I didn't want marriage as transaction. I didn't want partnership built on power. So when you walked into that throne room, Maya felt her breath catch. When you walked in, desperate and brave and asking for help, I saw an opportunity. A way to take a consort on my terms. Someone who chose me out of need, yes, but honest need. Not ambition, not politics, just survival. That's not very romantic, Maya said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Dorian's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm not a romantic man. I'm a king who's tired of games, and you're a woman who needed protection. We can build something real from that foundation, or we can build nothing at all. Either way, the claim stands. You're safe. That's what I wanted to give you. Maya studied him. Tried to reconcile the cold vampire king with the man talking about his dead wife, about honest need, about giving safety without demanding payment. Are there rules, she asked. Things I need to know, about being a consort. Many, Dorian said. Celeste will teach you. Court etiquette. Political nuance. How to navigate vampire society without getting yourself killed. But the essential rules are simple. You represent me now. Your actions reflect on my authority. You'll attend formal events at my side. You'll live in this wing of the palace. And you'll wear my mark where others can see it. Your mark. He crossed the room, closing the distance between them with predatory grace that made Maya's instincts scream run even as her feet stayed planted. He stopped close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him, close enough to see silver threading through the dark hair at his temples. "May I?" he asked, reaching toward her throat. Maya's pulse jumped. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Dorian's fingers brushed the side of her neck, cool and careful. He touched a spot just below her ear, and Maya felt a sharp sting followed by spreading cold. When he pulled his hand away, she saw frost melting on his fingertips. She touched her neck and felt raised skin. A mark. His mark. Sealed in ice and magic, claiming her as his. "It'll fade to silver," he said. "Like a scar. Any vampire who sees it will know you're bound to me. Untouchable." Maya looked down at her hands, at the simple calluses from kneading bread, at the dress that marked her as common. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry had been making rent. Now she wore a vampire king's mark and stood in his private chambers as his wife. The absurdity of it hit her all at once. "I don't know how to be a queen," she said. "Good," Dorian replied. "I don't need a queen. I have a kingdom. What I need is someone real in a palace full of masks. Someone who'll tell me the truth even when it's inconvenient. Can you do that?" Maya met his eyes. Those steel-gray depths that held 2 centuries of life and loss. "Yes," she said. "I think I can. Then we'll figure out the rest as we go." He moved back to the window, giving her space to breathe. "There are 3 rooms in this wing. My bedroom. Your bedroom. And the shared sitting room where we are now. You're welcome to your privacy. I won't intrude unless you invite me. But in public, we'll need to appear united. Devoted even. Can you pretend that much?" "I thought we weren't pretending," Maya said. The corner of Dorian's mouth lifted. "We're not pretending about the bond. But affection takes time to build. So yes, we'll pretend at first. Until it becomes real, or doesn't." He paused. "I won't hold you to loving me, Maya. But I will hold you to honoring the claim. To standing at my side. To being mine in the eyes of the law. That's all I require." It felt like too little and too much all at once. Maya picked up her whiskey glass again, draining the last of the amber liquid. "When do I meet Marcus?" she asked. "To tell him I'm claimed." "You don't," Dorian said, and his voice went cold enough to frost the windows. "I'll handle Marcus Vrel. You'll never have to see him again. That's the point of this." Maya wanted to argue, wanted to say she could face her own problems. But the truth was, she couldn't. Marcus terrified her in a way that went bone deep. So she just nodded. A knock at the door interrupted them. Celeste entered carrying an armful of deep blue fabric. "Your rooms are prepared," she said to Maya. "I've brought a dressing gown. You should rest. Tomorrow will be demanding." Dorian inclined his head in dismissal, and Maya found herself following Celeste through a door she hadn't noticed, into a bedroom larger than her entire apartment. The bed was enormous, draped in silver and midnight blue. Windows overlooked gardens bathed in moonlight. A wardrobe stood open, already filling with clothes she hadn't chosen. "This is too much," Maya whispered. "You'll adjust," Celeste said. She set the dressing gown on the bed. "The king is not cruel, girl. Cold, yes. Demanding, certainly. But not cruel. You could have done much worse." Maya thought about Marcus Vrel's smile, about the letters that promised love and threatened ownership. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I could have." Celeste left her alone. Maya stood in the center of her new bedroom, touching the mark on her neck, and wondered what she'd really agreed to. "No pretending," the king had said. But Maya had been pretending her whole life. Pretending she wasn't afraid. Pretending she didn't need help. Pretending she could survive alone. Maybe it was time to stop. The dress Celeste brought her the next morning was the color of midnight, and made from fabric that probably cost more than Maya had earned in her entire life. She stood in front of the mirror while two vampire attendants she'd never met before laced her into it, pulling the corset tight enough to make breathing an adventure. "This is ridiculous," Maya muttered. "This is Court," one of the attendants replied. Her name was Sarah, and she had kind eyes despite the fangs. "You represent the king now. Ridiculous is required." The dress transformed her. Gone was the bakery worker and cotton and flour dust. The woman staring back from the mirror looked like she belonged in a palace, all dark silk and pale skin and the silver mark glinting at her throat. Maya touched it again. She'd touched it a dozen times since waking, unable to quite believe it was real. "It suits you," a voice said from the doorway. Maya turned to find Dorian watching her. He wore black and crimson again, formal attire that made him look even more untouchable than usual. But his eyes, when they met hers, held something warmer than winter. "You look like a queen," he said. "I look like I'm playing dress-up," Maya corrected. "Same thing," Dorian said, and there was almost humor in his voice. "Most of royalty is playing dress-up and hoping no one notices." He crossed to her, moving with that liquid grace that still made her instincts scream danger. He held out a small box. "This was Isla's. My first wife. I want you to have it." Maya opened the box. Inside lay a ring of silver and moonstone, delicate and old. "I can't," she started. "You can," Dorian said. "She would have liked you. You're both too brave for your own good." He took the ring from the box and slid it onto Maya's finger. It fit perfectly, the moonstone catching the light like captured starlight. "There," he said softly. "Now you look the part." The formal presentation happened in the great hall at sunset. Maya stood beside Dorian's throne, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back, while what felt like every vampire in the kingdom filed past to pay respects. Lords and ladies in velvet and jewels, ancient creatures who'd seen empires rise and fall, all of them staring at the human girl who'd somehow become their king's consort overnight. "Congratulations, Your Majesty," they said, voices dripping with false warmth and real calculation. "Such an unexpected choice. How modern. I'm sure she'll be a credit to the throne." Maya smiled until her face hurt, thanked them in her carefully practiced court voice, felt Dorian's hand steady against her back, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone in this. Then Marcus Vrel entered the hall. Maya knew him instantly. Tall and blonde with eyes like chips of ice and a smile that had once seemed charming before it turned predatory. He wore expensive clothes and carried himself like nobility, but there was something oily about him, something that made Maya's skin crawl. Marcus stopped in front of the throne. His eyes raked over Maya, lingering on the mark at her throat, on the ring on her finger. When he finally looked at Dorian, his smile had sharpened to something dangerous. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "I heard the most interesting rumor, that you'd taken a human consort. I had to come see for myself." Dorian's hand pressed firmer against Maya's back. "The rumor is truth," he said. "Maya is my bonded consort, my wife, legally and magically bound." Marcus's smile didn't waver. How extraordinary. I'd been courting a human girl myself. Young thing. Worked at a bakery in town. Looks remarkably like your new bride, actually. What a strange coincidence. "It's not a coincidence," Maya said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "You were stalking me, Marcus, leaving threats disguised as love letters, waiting outside my work. I came to the king for protection, and he gave it to me." The hall went silent. Every vampire present suddenly found this conversation infinitely more interesting than polite congratulations. Marcus's expression flickered. Just for a moment, the charm cracked, and something vicious showed through. "Stalking is such an ugly word," he said. "I was courting you properly, following the old traditions. You should have been honored." "I was terrified," Maya shot back. "You said if I didn't accept you, you'd invoke the claiming rights." Make me property. So yes, I ran. And yes, I married the one man powerful enough to keep you away from me. Marcus turned to Dorian. The claiming rights are legal, Your Majesty, sanctioned by the old laws. If the girl was unclaimed, I had every right to pursue her. She's not unclaimed anymore, Dorian said. His voice had gone very quiet. Very cold. And I'm curious, Vrel. How many humans have you claimed over the centuries using those old laws? How many terrified girls did you hunt into submission because tradition allowed it? Marcus's jaw tightened. I've done nothing illegal. No, Dorian agreed. But you've done everything cruel. Which is why I'm abolishing the claiming rights. Effective immediately. The hall erupted, gasps and whispers and shocked exclamations rippling through the assembled vampires like wind through a graveyard. Your Majesty, someone protested. The old laws. Tradition. The claiming rights have existed for millennia, and they're barbaric, Dorian said, standing. His voice carried through the hall, hard and final. They turned courtship into hunting. Love into ownership. I won't have it in my kingdom anymore. As of tonight, any vampire who attempts to invoke the claiming rights against a human will answer to me personally. The threat in those last words made the air itself feel heavier. Marcus stared at the king, something ugly twisting his features. This is because of her, he said, gesturing at Maya. You're changing centuries of tradition for one human girl. I'm changing centuries of tradition because it should have been changed long ago, Dorian corrected. Maya simply gave me the excuse I needed. He descended from the throne, putting himself between Maya and Marcus. She's mine, Vrel. Bonded and marked and untouchable. If you approach her again, if you even look at her wrong, I'll consider it a declaration of war against my house. Do you understand me? Marcus held his gaze for a long moment. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Then Marcus bowed, sharp and mocking. Perfectly clear, Your Majesty. Congratulations on your marriage. I hope it brings you joy. He left without another word, but the look he shot Maya over his shoulder promised this wasn't over. That night, after the presentation ended, and the last vampire had paid their respects, Maya sat in her bedroom staring at Isla's ring on her finger. A knock at the connecting door made her look up. Come in, she called. Dorian entered, still in his formal clothes but with his jacket removed. He looked tired in a way that made Maya realize even immortal kings could be exhausted. You handled Marcus well, he said. Better than I expected. I wanted to throw something at him, Maya admitted. Preferably something sharp. Dorian's mouth curved. I would have allowed it. He sat in the chair across from her, maintaining careful distance. I meant what I said in there. About abolishing the claiming rights. This wasn't just political maneuvering. I've wanted to end that practice for decades. Your situation gave me the leverage I needed. Maya studied him. You really loved her, she said. Your first wife, Isla. Dorian's expression softened. More than I knew how to say. We met when she was 20. I was already old then, already tired of immortality. She made me remember what it felt like to be alive. When she died, I thought I'd never feel that way again. He met Maya's eyes. I'm not asking you to replace her, or to love me the way she did. I'm just asking you to be here. To be real. That's enough. Is it enough for you? Maya asked. Living with someone you don't love. Dorian was quiet for a long moment. Ask me again in a year, he said finally. See if the answer has changed. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. You were brave today, facing Marcus. Speaking up when you could have stayed silent. Isla would have done the same thing. He left before Maya could respond. She sat alone in her too large bedroom, wearing her too expensive dress, touching the mark that made her a queen, and she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could build something real from this strange arrangement after all. Maya's days developed a rhythm. Mornings with Celeste, learning the intricate dance of court politics. Which nobles to trust, which to avoid, which were merely ambitious, and which were actively dangerous. Afternoons in the palace library, reading histories and law texts until her eyes crossed. Evenings at Dorian's side during formal dinners, where she smiled and nodded, and tried not to say anything that would start a war. But the nights were her own. Dorian kept his promise about privacy. He never entered her bedroom uninvited, never demanded more than she'd agreed to give. They shared the sitting room sometimes, reading in companionable silence or discussing the day's challenges. He was easier to talk to than Maya had expected, sharp and funny in a dry way that caught her off guard. But there was always distance, always that careful space he maintained, as if afraid to get too close. 3 weeks after the presentation, Maya woke to find fresh flowers on her breakfast tray. Moonflowers, pale and ghostly, that only bloomed at night. There was a note in Dorian's precise handwriting. For being brave enough to tell Councilwoman Thera her proposed tax increase was predatory. She needed to hear it. Maya smiled despite herself. The council meeting yesterday had been brutal. Thera had suggested doubling taxes on human merchants, and Maya had pointed out that would force most of them out of business. The room had gone silent, shocked that a human consort would dare contradict a vampire councilwoman. But Dorian had backed her up. Revised the proposal to something reasonable. Made it clear that Maya's voice carried weight. She touched the moonflowers gently. They were beautiful in a haunting way, like everything else in this palace. Like Dorian himself. "You're getting soft," she told herself. "Don't mistake kindness for love." But it was getting harder to maintain that distance. Harder to ignore the way Dorian listened when she spoke. The way his hand found the small of her back in crowded rooms, steadying her. The way he'd started asking her opinion on kingdom matters, actually seeming to value her perspective. Maya dressed and headed for the library. She'd been researching human vampire marriage laws, trying to understand exactly what she'd agreed to. The legal texts were dense and archaic, but she was determined to know every clause, every obligation, every potential escape route if things went wrong. She was deep in a particularly convoluted property rights statute when a shadow fell across her page. She looked up to find a vampire she didn't recognize standing over her. He was young-looking, maybe early 30s in appearance, with copper hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The king's little human," he said. "I've been curious to meet you." Maya closed her book. "I don't believe we've been introduced." "Adrian Kine," he said, executing a mocking bow, Lord of the Eastern Territories, and very interested in understanding how a bakery worker seduced our immortal king into abandoning centuries of careful neutrality. "I didn't seduce anyone," Maya said coolly. "I asked for protection." He offered a solution. Lord Kine circled her chair like a shark scenting blood. "And you expect us to believe he abolished the claiming rights, upended tradition and bound himself to a human out of pure altruism? Come now, what did you really offer him?" Maya felt ice in her veins. "Careful," she said quietly. "You're insulting both me and your king." "Am I?" Kine leaned close enough that she could smell old blood on his breath. "Or am I simply asking the questions everyone else is thinking? What's your angle, human? What do you want from him?" "Nothing," Maya said, "and if you don't back away from me in the next 3 seconds, you'll find out exactly how much the king values my well-being." Kane's smile sharpened. Empty threats from a... His words cut off, as Dorian's hand closed around his throat. The king had appeared from nowhere, moving faster than Maya's eyes could follow. He lifted Kine off the ground effortlessly, slamming him against the library shelves hard enough to make books rain down. "I believe my consort asked you to step away," Dorian said. His voice was perfectly calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You seem to have difficulty following simple instructions." Kine clawed at Dorian's hand, his face turning purple. "Your Majesty," he choked out. "I meant no, you meant to intimidate her," Dorian interrupted. "To make her feel unsafe in her own home. To question her worth and her motives." He leaned closer, his eyes gone cold as winter death. "Let me be very clear, Kaine. Maya is not merely my consort. She is my partner, my equal in all ways the law allows. Any insult to her is an insult to me. Any threat to her is a declaration of war. Do you understand?" Kaine managed a strangled nod. Dorian released him. The vampire collapsed to the floor, gasping. "Get out," the king said quietly. "And spread the word. Anyone who questions Maya's place here will answer to me personally." Kaine fled. Books continued to fall from the disturbed shelves, their pages fluttering like broken wings. Dorian turned to Maya, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" Maya's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her book to still them. "He was just talking," she said. "Just being an ass. You didn't have to." "Yes," Dorian said. "I did." He crossed to her, crouching beside her chair so they were eye level. His hand covered hers on the book. Warm for once instead of cold. "Listen to me. There will be others like Kaine. Vampires who see you as weakness. As a political liability. As prey. I need you to understand that I will not tolerate that. Not ever. You're under my protection, Maya. That means something. I'm not some helpless thing that needs constant defending," Maya said. "I can handle myself." "I know you can," Dorian replied. "You've already proven that a dozen times over. But you shouldn't have to. Not here. Not in your own home." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it made her throat tight. "I failed, Isla," he said quietly. "In the end. She got sick, and I couldn't save her. Couldn't stop time from taking her away from me. I won't fail you. I won't let anything hurt you. Not if I can prevent it." Maya looked at him. Really looked at him for maybe the first time. Saw past the cold vampire king to the man underneath. The one who'd loved his first wife enough to mourn her for 2 centuries. The one who'd abolished cruel laws because one terrified girl asked for help. The one who sent her flowers and defended her honor and looked at her like she mattered. Oh, she thought. Oh no. This was supposed to be pretend. A transaction. Protection in exchange for appearances. But somewhere between the throne room and the library, between the formal dinners and the quiet evenings, it had stopped being pretend for her. She'd fallen for him. For his dry humor and unexpected kindness, for the way he listened to her opinions, for the careful distance he maintained because he thought that's what she needed, for the flowers on her breakfast tray, and the way his hands steadied her in crowds. For all of it. "Maya," Dorian said, studying her face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," she lied. She pulled her hand away gently. "Thank you. For defending me. But I should get back to my reading." She could see he wanted to push. To ask what had shifted in the last 30 seconds. But he respected boundaries too much to pry. He stood, inclining his head. "I'll be in my study if you need me." He left her alone with the fallen books and her racing heart. Maya pressed her hands to her face and tried to breathe through the realization. She'd fallen in love with the vampire king. The one who'd married her out of convenience. The one who'd been clear from the beginning that affection might never develop. The one who was still in love with a ghost. This was going to hurt. The palace gardens at midnight were otherworldly. Silver moonlight turned everything to shades of pearl and shadow, and the night-blooming flowers released perfume that smelled like secrets. Maya walked the stone paths because she couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about Dorian's hands covering hers, about the look in his eyes when he'd defended her, about the growing ache in her chest that felt like hope and doom tangled together. She found him by the fountain. Of course she did. The gardens were enormous, maze-like, but somehow she always found him when she wandered at night, as if gravity itself pulled her toward him. He stood with his back to her, staring at the water. He'd removed his jacket, rolled his sleeves to his elbows. For once, he looked almost human, almost vulnerable. "I didn't mean to disturb you," Maya said. Dorian turned, smiled slightly. "You never disturb me." He gestured to the stone bench beside the fountain. "Join me." Maya sat, careful to maintain distance. The fountain trickled between them, providing something to focus on besides the man who made her heart race. "I come here when I can't sleep," Dorian said after a moment. "It helps." "Thinking too much?" Maya asked. "Always." He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I brought Isla here. On our wedding night. This fountain existed even then. We sat exactly where you're sitting, and she told me she was terrified." Maya's breath caught. "Of you? Of everything. The palace. The vampires. The immortality she'd agreed to try to match me with. She was 20 years old, and she'd married someone ancient because her family needed the alliance. She barely knew me." Dorian's expression was distant, lost in memory. But she was honest about her fear. Said we'd have to build something real or the next decades would be unbearable. So we did. Slowly. She taught me to laugh again. I taught her to be ruthless when necessary. We built a partnership, and then, Maya said softly. And then she aged, and I didn't. He looked at his hands as if they'd betrayed him. At 40, she was still beautiful, still sharp and clever and herself. But her hair was graying and her joints ached, and I watched her struggle with things that used to be easy. At 50, she needed help with stairs. At 60, she couldn't remember my name some days, and I stood beside her exactly as I am now. Unchanged, watching time steal her piece by piece. His voice cracked. She died at 62. In her sleep. Peacefully, and I was grateful because at least she wasn't in pain anymore. But I also felt like I'd been robbed, like we'd barely had any time at all. 17 years. What's 17 years to someone who's lived for millennia? Nothing. A heartbeat. Maya wanted to touch him, to offer comfort, but she kept her hands in her lap. "I'm sorry," she said, "that you lost her." Dorian looked at her then, really looked at her, with something raw in his eyes. "I swore I'd never do that again. Never love a human. Never watch someone I care about wither while I stay frozen. It's why I refused every marriage my council proposed. Why I've stayed alone for 2 centuries. He paused. "And then you walked into my throne room." Maya's heart hammered. "Dorian, don't," he said quickly. "Don't say anything yet. Let me finish." He took a breath that seemed unnecessary for someone who didn't need to breathe. "I told you this marriage was about protection, about taking a consort on my terms. And that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth." Maya waited. The fountain trickled. Somewhere in the garden, a night bird called. "The whole truth is that I looked at you in that throne room, brave and desperate and asking for help, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 200 years, Dorian said. I felt alive, interested, connected. And it terrified me. Because I knew what it meant, that if I claimed you, if I brought you into my life, I'd be setting myself up for the same pain all over again. Watching you age, losing you. But I did it anyway," he continued. "I told myself it was about the claiming rights, about politics, about finding an excuse to take a consort without political strings. But really, I just wanted you here. I wanted to see what we might build together, even knowing how it ends." Maya's throat felt tight. "You said no, pretending." "I lied," Dorian said simply. I've been pretending this whole time. Pretending I'm not falling for you. Pretending the distance I maintain is about giving you space, when really it's about protecting myself. Pretending that the flowers I send are just friendly gestures, not me trying to make you smile because your smile makes this palace feel less cold. He stood, pacing to the fountain's edge. I know you didn't sign up for this. You asked for protection, not a lovesick vampire king who's terrified of losing you before he's even really had you. And I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I just needed you to know. Because I'm tired of pretending. Maya's hands shook. She pressed them together to still them. How long? She asked. How long have you been feeling this way? Since the presentation, Dorian admitted. When you stood up to Marcus. When you spoke truth to power, even though you were terrified. Since then, I've been watching you navigate this court with grace and courage and honesty. And every day it gets harder to maintain distance. Every day I want to knock on your door and ask if I can just sit with you. Talk to you. Be near you. Maya stood, crossed to him. Her heart felt like it might explode out of her chest. You're an idiot, she said. Dorian blinked. What? All this time, Maya said, her voice shaking. All these weeks of careful distance and polite space. All these evenings where you'd say goodnight and leave when I wanted you to stay. And you were doing it because you thought you were protecting yourself. Protecting both of us. Yes, Dorian said carefully. I'm an idiot too, Maya said. Because I've been falling for you since you sent me those first moonflowers. Maybe even before that. Since you defended me. In the council meeting, since you held my hand in the throne room and promised I'd be safe. I've been terrified you'd never see me as more than a political convenience. That this would always be pretend for you. She reached up and touched his face. He went very still under her hand, his eyes wide. It stopped being pretend for me weeks ago, Maya whispered. I love you. And yes, I'm terrified. Terrified you'll get bored of me. Terrified I'll age and you'll regret binding yourself to someone mortal. Terrified of everything Marcus made me feel, but different. Better. Because this fear comes with hope. Dorian caught her hand against his cheek, turned his face to press a kiss to her palm. His eyes closed, and when they opened again, they were bright. Say it again, he said hoarsely. I love you, Maya repeated. I love your dry humor and your terrible political maneuvering and the way you send me flowers. I love how you listen to me, how you made me feel valuable when I'd spent so long feeling invisible. I love. Dorian kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and certain, and 2 centuries of loneliness finally breaking. His hands cradled her face like she was something precious, and Maya rose on her toes to meet him, her fingers tangling in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Dorian rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise you forever, he said. You'll age and I won't. That reality doesn't change. But I can promise you now. Every moment we have, every day, every year, however long you'll give me, I can promise to love you through all of it. That's enough, Maya said. The fountain trickled beside them. The moon painted everything silver. And 2 people who'd agreed to pretend discovered something real instead. The palace felt different after that night. Brighter, somehow. Or maybe Maya was just different, walking its halls knowing she wasn't alone in this anymore. Dorian still maintained propriety in public, but in private, the distance disappeared. He started joining her for breakfast, started knocking on her door in the evenings to ask if she wanted company, started touching her casually, a hand at her waist, fingers brushing her arm, little gestures that said mine in ways that made her feel cherished rather than owned. But the court noticed. How could they not? The king smiled more. sought his consort's counsel openly, looked at her with something that couldn't be mistaken for political alliance. And not everyone was happy about it. 6 weeks after the garden confession, Maya sat in a council meeting listening to Lord Ashford drone on about trade agreements. Dorian sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral, but his hand rested on the arm of her chair, close enough to touch but not quite touching, claiming her presence without being obvious about it. The Eastern merchants are pushing back on the new tariff structure, Ashford said. They claim it favors human traders unfairly. Because it prevents vampires from bleeding them dry with unreasonable fees, Maya said. The table went silent. Ashford stared at her. I beg your pardon. The old tariff rates were designed when humans had no representation in trade negotiations, Maya explained. They're predatory. The new structure just makes things fair. That's not unfair to vampire traders. It just stops them from having an unfair advantage. Councilwoman Thera leaned forward. With respect, Lady Maya, you're quite new to palace politics. Perhaps it's best to leave trade policy to those with more experience. Maya felt Dorian's hand shift to cover hers. A subtle warning or support. She wasn't sure which. With respect, Councilwoman, I've spent my entire life on the receiving end of vampire trade policy, Maya said. I know exactly how it affects the people you're making decisions about. That's experience too. Just a different kind. Thera's smile went sharp. Of course. How fortunate that the king values your unique perspective. Some might say he's become rather distracted by it. The implication hung in the air like poison. Maya felt anger flash through her, but Dorian spoke before she could. Careful, he said quietly. Thera's smile didn't waver. I'm merely noting that your majesty seems quite taken with his new bride. It's natural, but perhaps concerning when personal attachment begins to influence policy decisions. She's right, Lord Kane added. His voice was smooth, but Maya remembered his hands at her throat in the library. Every decision made since the king's marriage has favored human interests. The claiming rights, the trade tariffs, even the new court positions opening to human applicants. Some might wonder if we're being led by emotion rather than reason. Dorian stood. The room fell silent. When he spoke, his voice was cold enough to frost windows. Let me clarify something, he said. Maya doesn't influence my decisions because I'm besotted and blind. She influences them because she's right. Because she sees the injustices I've been ignoring for centuries. Because she makes me a better king. If you have a problem with that, take it up with me directly. Don't hide behind implications about her character. He looked around the table, meeting each council member's eyes. Maya is my consort, my partner, my equal voice in this court. That's not changing. If you can't accept that, there are other territories that might appreciate your service. The threat was unmistakable. The council members exchanged glances. Ashford cleared his throat. Of course, Your Majesty. No disrespect intended. The meeting continued, but the tension remained. When it finally ended and the councilors filed out, Thera paused by Maya's chair. A word of advice, she said quietly. Being right won't protect you if the king loses interest. You might want to consider your position more carefully. She left before Maya could respond. Dorian appeared at her side. Ignore her, he said. She's testing you. Seeing if you'll crack under pressure. Maya looked at the empty council chamber. They hate me. Some do, Dorian admitted. Others are just afraid of change. Either way, they'll adjust or they'll leave. I'm not sacrificing what we're building for their comfort. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the meeting. The barely concealed hostility. The way they looked at her like she was temporary, disposable. She found herself in the library again, reading law texts by candlelight, trying to understand the full scope of what she'd agreed to, trying to find loopholes or escape clauses, just in case. Research or worry? Dorian's voice came from the doorway. Maya looked up. He wore a silk robe, his hair slightly mussed. He looked younger like this. Less kingly, more human. Both, she admitted. Dorian crossed to her, reading over her shoulder. Marriage dissolution laws. His voice was carefully neutral. Second thoughts? No, Maya said quickly. Just wanting to understand my options. In case you change your mind. In case this stops being real for you. Dorian pulled a chair close, turned her to face him. Look at me. Maya met his eyes. Those steel-gray depths that had terrified her once and now made her feel safe. I'm not going to change my mind, he said. I know Thera got to you today. I know the council is pushing back. But none of that changes how I feel about you. You're not Isla's replacement or a political convenience or a temporary distraction. You're Maya. And I love you. The word still felt new. Precious. Maya's eyes burned. They called me a distraction. Said you're making poor decisions because of me. Am I making poor decisions? Dorian asked. Maya thought about the claiming rights, the trade reforms, the court positions opening to humans, all policies that helped people who'd never had protection before. No, she said. You're making good decisions, just long overdue ones. Then their problem isn't with my judgment, Dorian said. It's with their loss of privilege, and I don't particularly care about making them comfortable. He took her hands. The human consort who makes me weak. That's how they see you. But you know what I see? I see the woman who walked into my throne room and demanded help, who stood up to vampires twice her age with 10 times her power, who changed my kingdom by asking one simple question. If that's weakness, I'll take it. Maya leaned forward until her forehead rested against his. I'm scared, she whispered, that they'll turn you against me. That I'll wake up one day and you'll realize I'm not worth the trouble. Never, Dorian said fiercely. You're worth everything. Do you understand me? Everything. He kissed her then, slow and thorough, like he had all the time in the world to prove his point. When they finally broke apart, Maya felt steadier. Still scared, but no longer alone in it. Stay with me tonight, Dorian said, not because of duty or obligation. Just because I want you close. Okay, Maya said. They returned to his chambers together. His bed was enormous, covered in black silk and silver thread. Maya curled against him, her head on his chest, listening to a heartbeat that barely moved. You know what's funny, she said. What? I came here to escape one vampire who wanted to own me, and instead I found one who makes me feel free. Dorian's arms tightened around her. That's all I want. For you to feel free, safe, loved. For however long we have. Maya closed her eyes. For the first time since entering the palace, she let herself believe it might actually be forever. Spring came to the vampire kingdom like a whisper. Flowers bloomed in the gardens, night-blooming varieties that Dorian said had been planted 2 centuries ago by Isla. Maya walked among them in the afternoons, learning their names, learning the history woven into every stone and petal of this place. She'd been Dorian's consort for 3 months now. 3 months of council meetings and formal dinners, and slowly winning over skeptical nobles through sheer stubbornness. 3 months of falling more deeply in love with a man who'd promised her forever and meant it. But forever Maya was learning. Came with complications. Lord Ashford approached her in the rose garden on a Tuesday afternoon. The spring sun felt warm on her skin, and she was sketching the flower beds for a human horticulture student who'd written asking for information. The palace library should be accessible to human scholars too, she'd suggested to Dorian last week. He'd agreed immediately, already drawing up plans to create a fellowship program. Lady Maya, Ashford said. His voice was carefully polite. Maya looked up from her sketching. Lord Ashford, what can I do for you? I was hoping we might speak privately. About the king. Maya set down her pencil. Unease prickled at her spine. She gestured to the bench beside her. We can speak here. Gardens private enough. Ashford sat stiffly. He was old, even by vampire standards. His face was lined in ways vampire faces rarely were, speaking to age beyond counting. "I won't waste your time with pleasantries," he said. "The council is concerned." About? About the king's attachment to you. His increasing tendency to prioritize human welfare over vampire interests. His willingness to overturn centuries of tradition. "That doesn't sound like concern," Maya said. "It sounds like opposition." "Call it what you like," Ashford replied. "The fact remains that Dorian is changing. And not everyone believes those changes are for the better." Maya kept her voice steady. "The changes ensure humans are treated fairly. That's not anti-vampire. It's pro-justice. Justice is a matter of perspective," Ashford said. "To vampires who've enjoyed certain privileges for millennia, your version of justice feels like loss." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm not your enemy, girl. I'm trying to help you understand the danger you're in." "What danger?" "The danger of a king who loves you too much to see clearly." Ashford's expression was grave. "Dorian abolished the claiming rights for you. He's restructuring trade policy because of you. He's opening the court to humans because you asked. Every major decision he's made in the last 3 months has been influenced by your presence in his life. That's not leadership. That's obsession." Maya's hands clenched. "He listens to me because I offer a perspective he needs. Because I care about people the council ignores. Not because he's obsessed." "You're mortal," Ashford said bluntly. "You'll age. You'll die. Likely within the next 60 years given human lifespans. And when you do, Dorian will be left with a kingdom reshaped around your temporary presence. Laws changed for your benefit. Policies built on your influence. What happens to all of that when you're gone?" Maya felt cold despite the spring warmth. What happens when the king who loved you too much is left alone with his grief?" Ashford continued. "When he realizes he's alienated his council, reshaped his kingdom and destroyed centuries of tradition for someone who couldn't stay. Do you think he'll thank you for that? Or do you think he'll regret every change he made while blinded by emotion?" "You're saying I should leave," Maya said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I'm saying you should consider the long-term consequences of your presence here," Ashford replied. "You love him. I can see that. And perhaps you believe you're helping him. But love that encourages a king to abandon reason isn't help. It's harm." He stood. "I've said my piece. What you do with it is your choice. But think about what you're really giving him. Temporary happiness followed by eternal regret. Or the chance to rule wisely without emotional compromise." He left her alone in the garden. The roses suddenly looked less beautiful. Maya sat with Ashford's words echoing in her head, cold dread spreading through her chest. That evening she barely spoke during dinner. Dorian noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked after they'd retired to his chambers. "Talk to me." Maya sat on the edge of his bed, hands twisting in her lap. "Ashford came to see me today." Dorian's expression hardened. "What did he say?" "That you're making poor decisions because of me," Maya said. "That I'm temporary and all your changes will seem foolish once I'm gone. That I'm encouraging you to abandon reason for emotion." Her voice cracked. "That I'm hurting you by being here." Dorian crossed to her in 2 strides, knelt in front of her so they were eye level. "Look at me." Maya forced herself to meet his gaze. "Every decision I've made has been right," Dorian said firmly. "Not because you influenced me. Because you showed me perspectives I'd been ignoring. The claiming rights were barbaric, with or without you. The trade policies were unjust, with or without you. Your presence didn't create these problems. It just forced me to finally address them. But when I die," Maya whispered, "when I'm gone, and you're left with everything we changed. What if you regret it? What if Ashford's right?" "Then Ashford's right," Dorian said simply. "And I'll deal with that regret when it comes. But Maya, listen to me. I would rather have 60 years with you and spend eternity regretting your loss than have eternity without ever knowing you at all. That's my choice. Mine. Not yours to make for me. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. I don't want to hurt you. You won't, Dorian said. Time will. Age will. Death will. Those things are inevitable. But the love we build in the meantime, that's worth the pain that comes after. Isla taught me that. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. Don't let Ashford scare you away. Don't let anyone make you believe you're not worth the cost of losing you. Because you are. You're worth everything. Maya pulled him close, burying her face in his shoulder. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love was enough. But Ashford's words had planted seeds of doubt, and she couldn't quite shake them. That night, she dreamed of growing old while Dorian stayed young. Of him looking at her with regret instead of love. Of dying and leaving him alone with changes he no longer believed in. She woke in darkness, Dorian sleeping beside her, and wondered if loving him was selfish, if staying was cruel, if the kindest thing might be to walk away before he sacrificed too much for someone temporary. But when morning came and he smiled at her over breakfast, all those doubts felt distant. Manageable. She'd face them when she had to. For now, she'd choose this. Choose him. Choose love. Even knowing the cost. Even knowing it would hurt. Because some things were worth the pain. The Festival of Spring Renewal happened every year. A celebration where the entire kingdom gathered to welcome the new season, to honor growth and change and transformation. This year, Dorian decided to make it something more. We're going to formalize your role, he told Maya a week before the festival. Not just as my consort, as co-regent. Maya nearly dropped her teacup. What? The council won't accept it, she said. Half of them barely tolerate me as it is, then they'll learn to tolerate more, Dorian replied. You've been advising me for months. Attending council meetings. Implementing policy changes. It's time your authority was official. Legal. Unquestionable. He took her hands. I'm not asking permission, Maya. I'm telling you my intention. Will you stand with me? Maya thought about Ashford's warnings. About being temporary. About causing damage. Then she thought about the human scholars who'd written thanking her for the library fellowship. The merchants who'd sent letters saying the trade reforms saved their businesses. The young vampire who'd approached her last week to say the claiming rights abolishment had freed him from an arranged bond he'd dreaded. She'd helped people. Made things better. That was worth fighting for. Yes, she said. I'll stand with you. The Festival of Spring Renewal began at sunset. The palace grounds transformed into a wonderland of lights and flowers and music. Vampires and humans mingled freely, the old barriers slowly dissolving. Maya wore midnight blue silk with moonstone jewelry that had belonged to Isla. Dorian had insisted, saying his first wife would have wanted her successor to wear them, that she would have loved Maya's courage. They stood on the balcony overlooking the celebration. Below, thousands of people danced and laughed and celebrated. Dorian took Maya's hand. Ready? She nodded. He stepped forward, and the crowd quieted. When the king spoke, his voice carried through the evening air. Tonight we celebrate renewal, he began. The spring that follows winter, the growth that comes from change. 3 months ago I took a human consort. Some of you questioned that choice, some still do, but I want you to understand why I made it. He turned to Maya, his expression open. Vulnerable. I married Maya because she saw injustices I'd been blind to. Because she asked why we accepted traditions that caused suffering. Because she made me want to be a better king, and in the months since, she's proven that her wisdom and compassion make this kingdom stronger. The crowd listened, silent. So tonight, I'm making her authority official, Dorian continued. By my decree and right as your king, Maya is hereby named co-regent of this realm. Her voice carries the same weight as mine. Her decisions stand as law. And anyone who questions her authority questions mine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Murmurs of shock and approval and outrage mixing together. Dorian ignored them. He turned to Maya, his eyes bright. Will you accept this responsibility? Maya's heart raced. This was it. The moment where she either stepped fully into this role or walked away. She thought about Ashford, about the council members who hated her, about the temporary nature of human life and all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about Dorian's hand in hers, about the children in the crowd who'd grow up in a kingdom where humans had voices, about building something that mattered. I accept, she said clearly. Dorian pulled a second crown from where it had been hidden behind the balcony railing. It was silver and moonstone, delicate but strong. He placed it on her head. The crowd erupted. Cheers from the humans who'd never had representation. Uncertain applause from vampires who were trying to navigate this new reality. And silence from those who would never accept it. Maya looked out at the sea of faces. At the future they were trying to build. It's real now, Dorian said quietly. Just for her. No pretending. No going back. Good, Maya said. I'm tired of pretending anyway. The celebration continued late into the night. Maya danced with Dorian, with human merchants, with vampire nobles who offered stiff congratulations. She smiled until her face hurt and tried to remember every moment, knowing this night would change everything. Around midnight, she found herself alone on a terrace. Needing a moment to breathe, that's when Marcus Vrel appeared from the shadows. Hello, Maya, he said. His smile was all teeth. Congratulations on your promotion. Maya's hand went to the knife she'd started carrying after Kane's library incident. What do you want, Marcus? To offer advice, he said. You think you've won. Think you've secured your place here. But you're still human. Still fragile. Still temporary. One mistake. One scandal. One moment of weakness, and it all falls apart. Stay away from me, Maya said. Dorian made it very clear what would happen if you approached me. Dorian's not here, Marcus said. And I'm not threatening you, I'm warning you. The council is looking for any excuse to remove you. Any slip, any failure, and they'll convince the king you're more liability than asset. He leaned close. You can't win this. You're mortal, limited. No matter how much he loves you now, you'll grow old and he won't. You'll become a burden, a reminder of his poor judgment, and when you finally die, he'll spend eternity regretting you. Get out, Maya said. Her voice shook but stayed firm. Now. Marcus laughed, already getting defensive. That's how they'll break you, girl. Through your own insecurity, through making you question whether you belong. He walked away, leaving Maya alone with words that echoed too closely to Ashford's warnings. When she returned to the celebration, Dorian noticed immediately. What happened? Marcus, Maya said. Just trying to get in my head. Did he succeed? Partially, Maya admitted. But I'm okay. Dorian's expression darkened. Where is he? He's gone, Maya said quickly. And you promised no confrontations tonight. Remember? Dorian looked like he wanted to argue, then sighed. Fine, but we're discussing security protocols tomorrow. Marcus shouldn't have been able to get near you. They returned to their chambers late, both exhausted. Maya removed her crown carefully, setting it on the dresser beside Isla's ring. I keep thinking about what Marcus said, she admitted. About me being temporary. Dorian pulled her close. Everyone is temporary to an immortal. That doesn't make you less valuable. Maybe not, Maya said. But it does make me scared. Scared I'm not enough. That I'll never be enough. You are enough, Dorian said firmly. You are everything. And I will spend however many years we have proving that to you. Maya kissed him, trying to believe it, trying to trust that love could be enough despite time and politics, and all the reasons it shouldn't work. Outside, the festival continued. Inside, two people who'd started with pretending held each other and hoped real would be strong enough to survive what was coming.